four people, four completely different decades, four completely different bank balances by the time they hit their current age. David is 70, a boomer, born right after the war, who spent his entire working life trusting one single company to take care of him. Lisa is 54, Generation X, the generation that watched their parents rent forever and decided a house wasn't just a home, it was the plan. Chris is 36, a millennial, who came up in a world with no pensions and no guarantees, so he learned to just keep working, harder, and hope it eventually paid off. And Maya is 23, Generation Z, the most financially educated generation in history, armed with more finance knowledge on her phone than her grandparents ever had access to in a lifetime. Four generations, four totally different money stories on the surface. But here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Every single one of them made the exact same mistake. Not something similar, not a loosely related mistake. The exact same one, just wearing a different costume depending on the decade they were born into. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which costume you're currently wearing. David, the boomer who trusted the company. David grew up watching his father work one job for 40 years and retire with a gold watch and a pension that paid until the day he died. That was the deal. Work hard, stay loyal, and the company takes care of the rest. That's just how the world worked, and nobody around David questioned it. So when David got hired at 24, he didn't think twice. He showed up early. He climbed the ladder slowly and steadily. He turned down 2 job offers in his 30s, both with better pay, because why leave when I've already got seniority here? Loyalty felt like the smart move, the responsible move. He believed, genuinely and reasonably, that his employer was his retirement plan, not a part of it, the whole thing. For a while, that belief was rewarded. Raises came, slow but steady. A pension fund grew quietly in the background, something he never had to think about, never had to check on, because someone else, someone smarter, someone whose whole job it was thinking about it for him. It felt safer that way. Why manage something yourself when professionals are already managing it? Then, in the early 90s, the company went through a major restructuring. The pension plan was frozen. Not stolen, not fraudulent, just quietly restructured in a way that meant David would receive far less than he'd been promised for 30 years of loyalty. Nobody broke the law. They just changed the terms, and David had no say in it, because he'd never actually owned any part of the decision. David is 70 now. He has his house, paid off, worth good money. But his retirement income is thinner than it should be for someone who worked hard and stayed loyal for over 3 decades. Because David's plan was never really his plan. It belonged to a company, and companies, when the numbers get tight, change their minds. David didn't fail. He wasn't careless. He simply trusted the wrong custodian and never asked the one question that would have protected him. What happens if this institution's priorities ever shift? Lisa, the Gen X who trusted the property. Lisa watched a very different lesson play out. She came of age just as home values started climbing fast, and everyone around her, parents, co-workers, the evening news, said the exact same thing. Property is the smartest investment you'll ever make. It only goes up. Buy as much house as you can afford, and let time do the rest. So Lisa bought early. Genuinely smart move, honestly at the time. And for 2 decades, the story held up beautifully. Her home's value more than tripled. On paper, she looked wealthy. She felt wealthy every time she checked the estimated value online, which, if she's honest, was more often than she'd like to admit. But here's what Lisa quietly did without ever really deciding to. She stopped building anything else. Why bother maxing out a workplace pension or opening an investment account when her house was already doing all the heavy lifting? The house became her whole financial identity. Every conversation about her future started and ended with, well, I've got the house, so I'll be fine. At 54, Lisa is asset-rich and cash-poor. Her net worth looks strong on a spreadsheet, but almost none of it is liquid. She can't spend a bedroom. She can't fund a comfortable retirement on square footage unless she sells and moves somewhere cheaper, away from her job, her friends, and the neighborhood she's called home for 20 years. And even then, moving costs and market timing make it far messier than the just sell the house plan ever sounded in her head. Lisa didn't do anything wrong buying that house. Her mistake was quieter and slower. She delegated her entire financial future to a single asset and never built a second plan in case that asset's growth ever slowed, or in case she needed real, spendable money before she was ready to sell. Chris, the millennial who trusted the hustle. Chris came up in a completely different world. No pensions waiting for him, no confidence that property would behave the way it used to, not with prices already stretched thin relative to what he earned. What Chris had instead was motion, the ability to work constantly, take on side gigs, learn new skills, stay flexible, never sit still. And to be fair, Chris's world basically told him this was the answer. Hustle culture was everywhere, on his phone, in his feed, in every motivational clip he scrolled past. Grind now, results later. Stay busy enough, work hard enough, and eventually all that effort has to turn into something real. So Chris did exactly that. 2 jobs, freelance work on weekends, constantly learning new skills, constantly building, constantly telling himself the payoff was just around the corner. From the outside, Chris looks like the hardest working person anyone knows. His friends admire his work ethic. His parents brag about him. But here's the quiet problem underneath all that motion. Chris delegated his financial security to activity itself, to the belief that enough hustling would eventually and automatically convert into wealth, the way steam eventually turns into pressure. Nobody ever sat him down and explained that motion isn't the same thing as money actually moving into an account that grows on its own, without him having to keep pushing it. At 36, Chris has almost nothing invested. Every extra dollar earned from the side hustle gets absorbed straight back into daily life, or into the next tool, course, or piece of equipment needed to hustle a little harder. He's exhausted, genuinely running on empty most weeks, and he's not actually any closer to financial security than he was 5 years ago. He built a habit of working. He never built a system of saving. Chris didn't fail to work hard. If anything, he worked harder than almost anyone around him. He trusted effort itself to be the plan, and effort without a clear destination just becomes permanent, exhausting motion. Maya, the Gen Z who trusted the information. And then there's Maya, who represents something genuinely new, something no earlier generation had access to. Maya didn't grow up trusting a company, a house, or hustle culture. Maya grew up trusting information itself. She's absorbed more financial knowledge by 23 than most people learn in an entire lifetime. She can explain index funds, dollar cost averaging, compound interest, and tax-advantaged accounts fluently, casually, in normal conversation, the way earlier generations might discuss the weather. She follows finance creators daily, watches breakdown videos on her commute, saves infographics she never opens again. She feels prepared in a way earlier generations never had the chance to feel at her age. Here's the trap, though, and it's genuinely subtle, easy to miss even from the inside. Maya delegated her security to knowing about money and quietly let that feel like the same thing as actually managing money. She's watched dozens of videos about investing consistently, about the power of showing up every single month. She's opened exactly 1 investment account and put in $50 8 months ago. She hasn't touched it since, though she could tell you, in detail, exactly what she should be doing. Knowledge became a substitute for action. Understanding the theory felt like progress, felt like she was already ahead, so the actual, boring, repetitive behavior, the automatic transfers, the consistent contributions, the patience, never quite got built. Maya isn't behind because she doesn't know enough. Nobody could accuse her of that. She's behind because knowing became something she quietly mistook for doing. Maya isn't in trouble, not even close. She has decades ahead of her, more time than any of the other 3 ever had at her age. But the trap is sitting there quietly right now, dressed up convincingly as competence, waiting for her to mistake understanding for progress 1 more year, and then another. 4 people, 4 different things they trusted. A company, a house, hustle, information. 1 mistake, repeated 4 times. They handed control of their future to something outside themselves, and stopped checking if it still worked. David trusted an institution that changed its mind. Lisa trusted an asset she couldn't spend piece by piece. Chris trusted effort that never turned into ownership. Maya trusted knowledge that never turned into action. None of them were careless. None of them were foolish. They were just following their generation's rules. That's the trap. It never feels like a mistake while it's happening. It feels like doing everything right. The fix is the same for all 4, just in different clothes. David, don't let the pension be the whole plan. Build your own alongside it. Lisa, don't let the house be your only asset. Keep investing elsewhere too. Chris, take 10% of every dollar you earn and move it somewhere untouched. Maya, turn 1 thing you know into 1 thing you do. Automate it. Stop researching the perfect account. 1 rule underneath all of it. Never fully hand your security to anything you don't personally control. Use the company, the house, the hustle, the knowledge. Just keep one hand on the wheel. David, Lisa, Chris, and Maya weren't careless or stupid. They just trusted what their generation told them to trust and stopped checking if it still worked. So, which one are you? A job? An asset? Constant motion? Knowledge without action? Tell me in the comments. Naming it is the first step out, and if this hit close to home, send it to someone who needs it.